Right now, this week, a company that spent decades disrupting cable television is collapsing under the weight of a newer disruptor. Three separate divisions of the same corporate empire have filed for bankruptcy in the span of about 5 weeks. This isn't a story we're telling you happened. This is a story happening as we publish this video. The empire belongs to Charlie Ergen, and the irony sitting underneath this entire collapse is hard to overstate. The same company that once got rich by disrupting an entrenched, expensive incumbent is now being taken apart by an entrenched incumbent's worst nightmare. Someone doing to them exactly what they once did to cable. The original disruptor. In 1980, Charlie Ergen, his wife Candy, and a friend named Jim DeFranco started EchoStar, selling large satellite dishes out of a truck to rural households cable companies had never bothered to reach. By 1996, EchoStar had turned that idea into Dish Network, an 18-inch satellite dish priced roughly $100 cheaper than its biggest rival, offering multi-channel TV to millions of people cable had left behind. It worked. Dish grew into one of the largest pay TV providers in the country, and Ergen built an empire around it. Sling TV, Boost Mobile, and Hughes, a satellite broadband arm serving rural internet customers the same way Dish once served rural TV customers. For decades, this company's entire identity was built on being the disruptor, the cheaper, scrappier alternative to an entrenched giant. Cracks in 3 places. On June 30th, 2026, 2 pieces of that empire, Dish DBS, which runs the Dish TV and Sling TV business, and Dish Wireless, which holds EchoStar's 5G network, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy together, with the support of creditors holding the vast majority of their debt. Then, just over a month later, on August 2nd, 2026, a third piece of the empire followed. Hughes, the satellite broadband arm, filed its own Chapter 11 case. It had $1.5 billion in bonds come due on August 1st and only about $100 million in cash on hand to cover it. 3 related but legally separate companies, all controlled by the same person, all filing for bankruptcy within about 5 weeks of each other. That's not a coincidence. That's the sound of one strategy failing across an entire portfolio at once, the new disruptor. Here's why it's failing. Hughes' own restructuring officer said plainly, in court filings, that the broadband market is shifting from old-style satellites, parked in a fixed orbit far above Earth, to new constellations of small satellites orbiting much closer, offering faster speeds and lower latency. He named the companies driving that shift directly: SpaceX's Starlink and Amazon's new LEO network. The numbers tell the rest. Hughes lost about 22% of its broadband subscribers in a single year. It reported $1.4 billion in revenue for 2025 and a $1.3 billion net loss in the same year. This is a company whose core business, the thing it was actually founded to do, has been outpaced by exactly the kind of newer, cheaper, more convenient technology that Ergen himself once used to outpace cable. What's actually disputed? To be fair and accurate here, not everything about this story is settled fact. A group of Hughes' bondholders sent the company a formal notice in July, alleging fraudulent transfers and breaches of fiduciary duty related to how the company had been run. Hughes has pushed back firmly, stating through its restructuring officer that it rejects any suggestion those claims have merit. That dispute hasn't been resolved by a court, and we're not going to pretend it has. It's part of what makes this story unfinished. What we don't know yet. Here's what's still genuinely up in the air. Hughes says it intends to keep serving customers while shifting its focus toward enterprise, government, and defense contracts instead of competing directly for everyday consumers. Essentially retreating from the fight it's losing to Starlink and Amazon, rather than continuing to fight it head-on. Whether that pivot works is an open question. Dish TV, Sling TV, and Boost Mobile aren't part of this particular bankruptcy and continue operating for now, though they're sitting inside the same wounded company. Nobody outside this story yet knows whether this ends in a leaner surviving business, a slow wind down, or something else entirely. The pattern, so far. We can't give you a tidy lesson for a story that hasn't ended. But the pattern already visible here is worth sitting with. Every disruptor in this channel's story bank eventually became an incumbent themselves. And incumbents have a specific blind spot. It's not that they fail to notice a new threat. It's that the muscle memory of having once been the scrappy underdog can make it harder to believe you could ever become the entrenched giant somebody else is coming for. We'll come back to this story once it's actually finished, once we know whether Hughes survives in a smaller form or doesn't survive at all. For now, consider this the pattern catching itself in the middle of repeating. Subscribe if you want to see the pattern before it repeats.